Hello and welcome to the Lean on Agile show. I'm your host Shaheen, and I have a dear friend of mine, Fahd. I know him through the Toronto Agile community. He's a very good member of the community here, and we have been helping through the same community events. Not directly, but I have seen him contributing to the community a lot, and he has more to say. Hello, Fahd. Thanks for coming to the show.
Hi, Shaheen. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. We've had some good fun hosting some of the events that I know, organize, as well as now at the premises we're at. I volunteer at the Toronto Agile, Agile TO. So
Right.
it's been a pleasure knowing you, and thanks for having me again.
No problem. So tell us who Fahd is.
So Fahd is an Agile coach based in Toronto, Canada, but not limited to working in the Greater Toronto area. I've had just over a decade of experience working both as a business analyst, but also an Agilist, through Scrum or Kanban practices and teams that build software mostly. And as we know, in the Greater Toronto area, most of the employment is with some sort of either financial services or telecom or retail, and healthcare and insurance. So that's where my experience has been, mostly in financial services and the banking sector. A few of the big five banks has been a lot of my experience throughout the last decade or so.
Right. So you mentioned business analysis in some part of your introduction. Am I correct to assume that you transition from a business analyst world to the agility world, become maybe a scrum master, become a team lead? Like, tell us more about how that worked.
Yeah, this is a funny story. I joined an IT consulting firm here in the GTA, a fairly large one in Canada, and as part of updating their human capital, the consulting firm had hired me up as a business analyst, and that's what I worked as for under a year. Then they said, well, a lot of our clients can benefit from Agile delivery, this thing called Agile. And so I was enrolled in a CSM, or Certified Scrum Master course, that was hosted at the premises of that firm. And all of a sudden, 2 days later, I was a CSM. And expected to run $1 million projects. Mm-hmm. But coming out of the course, my eyes had been open to this new way of working that was more natural. That was I love that one of my product owners in the past said, this is logical. And I was like, that's exactly what I love. And you realize that there's a better way of working than these super defined things that are out there in the market. So that's what opened my eyes to it. And the funny thing is, the program or the project I was on, there was somebody named a Scrum Master in a Scrum Master role there that was playing that role. We were having daily stand-ups, we were doing iterative development, etc. at the time. And I had no idea. It just felt like, okay, this is an interesting way of tracking and communicating and, organizing ourselves. But I didn't have the context of what this is and why are we working this way. And so after that 2-day course, it made complete sense to me. And then it was a more natural. So that I kind of fell, or I was enrolled into the Agile space, if you will. But I could tell you, have not looked back and don't want to.
Yeah, same here. And that's a sign of a really good course to be on. To go there and your eyes be open and figure out, oh, there are a whole new way of doing this stuff, and not only looking at getting a certification and telling the world that I am the Scrum Master, right? And so when your eyes got open, like, what aspects of the Scrum Mastership or agility were you called it natural? Like, it felt more natural. I call it, with a couple of friends that we talked most of the time, we call it common sense. We call it, this has to be a common sense framework. Like, it makes common sense. Like, but what areas did you find yourself more interested to expand your career?
Horizons? Yeah, the first piece was that you talked to people more frequently than not. Let's just put it that way first. That was the first thing. I was like, oh, that makes sense, because naturally, and you know this, we know each other a little bit. I like to be around people. I love talking to people, social person naturally. And so that was the first thing. I was like, okay, so this is not about just sending emails to each other and getting the project moving along. So that was a big part of it. So the people interactions portion. The second one was visualization of work and making it visible in a common place. And I know that touches on a couple of other nerves of what you and I love. So that was one key one. All right, that makes sense. Not only one person doesn't have the full picture. Everybody does, or at least everybody has access to the full picture. It's their choice. But the point is not consolidated in one place with one person. That was the other eye-opening thing. That makes sense. There's a bunch of people on this program, especially my only point of reference was this big program, because that's what I had just been pulled out of for this training. So it was 80 to 100 people, right? It makes sense. This is not a one-person show. It's 80 to 100 people working on this thing. So all of us need to have an eye on the ball. So those were a couple of natural aspects of this that, I'd even observed in our family. Things you organize your family around is, okay, we're going on a trip. Oh, when are we going on the trip? On this date. And for how long? For 5 days. And what do we need for the trip? You talk about this as a family, right?
Right.
And so these things were just common sense and natural that came to me out of the course. The other one was things can be improved over time. And that's iterative development. That's the basis of what we do and what we believe to be true, is that you won't build it perfectly the first time, whether it's a document or whether it's a paragraph that you're writing or an email you're writing, or it's complex software you're writing. You won't get it right the first time. You will go back and edit, etc. So those are a couple of things that really stuck with me. And coming out of the class as a business analyst, my first thing to my manager at the time was, how can I do this role that you just sent me to? I understand I can bring elements to my current role, but how can I do this role of this team facilitator, of the scrum master? Because that, to me, of rallying the people, bringing information to light and talking to people was what was so attractive to me about building a career in agility in general.
And you were I'm guessing based on what you're saying, you were lucky to have that kind of a manager, because I talked to so many people in the community, or they approach me that we want to be a scrum master, and I'm asking them what part of a scrum mastership or agility can you bring to your own role, and we talk about that. These are the things that they can do, but your manager actually send you to a CSM class to bring those things to your role. So people change jobs for their leadership. They don't change jobs for that. And that was an amazing person to work for. So after that, you become a Scrum Masters, and I'm assuming you said you never looked back. So is there, if you, there were points that made you want 1% chance to look back, like the hard days that you might have in the agility world, as an agile coach, as a scrum master? What was those days could be?
We have a lot of those days, not so much anymore, but we do have some of those days sometimes, in the beginning especially. One of the first things was just kind of continuing but also answering your question. Coming out of the class, I said, can I get this role? The manager said yes, but here's the problem with the current client and the current project you're in. I don't have a staffed position that I have sold. So what I'd like you to do is, what I can do is, I won't put a project manager or a scrum master in there. I'd like you to fill that gap at the same time. And I was like, perfect solution, right? I keep doing what I'm doing. I'm still providing value for what they hired me and what they placed me to do at this client. At the same time, I'm allowed to, start to use these tools that I've in my pocket to learn how to use them well and make mistakes. And one of the earlier mistakes was I'm not going to call it regret, but it was a point of turbulence, let's call it, was at later on, a couple of months into the same kind of 1 year funded initiative with the client, our client was acquiring another business, right? Another bank, another credit card. And their team was split between Ottawa, in a couple of places in Toronto, and the United States. Their mothership was in the United States for that subset of the business. And so one of the first things was that I say, okay, I want to be a Scrum Master. I come with all this new energy and these new things to do, and I have to start with a distributed team right off the bat. And today there are Scrum Masters or team facilitators in general that barely have had to deal with that, and then they're faced with that solution, but they can rely on some older tool set. In my case, I came out of the 2-day training. 2 weeks later, I'm dealing with a distributed team with lockdown environments that, we don't have a common place to track our backlog. So Jira was, secure, or and you're not allowed to do any other cloud solution, even temporarily. So they hadn't solved for that. Communication platforms were completely different: Cisco versus Skype versus something else. And the third thing was, like, physical locations were different, and some team members were, and this is part of an acquisition. And so the cultural aspect of this is, okay, am I going to be happy at this new employer of mine or a new company, or should I start looking for work? So those are more existential questions that people were dealing with at the same time that they had to deliver this project, and then work with this distributed team. So those are days like, why did I take this on? Can I just go back to hide myself behind a whole bunch of documentation for these integrations, and I'll just send them the specs and they'll take care of the rest of it. There were some days there right after, but the more I did this, the closer our relationship as a team began, because we started to talk to each other more and more. It got better, and you start to see the light a little bit after being in the mud for a certain while. So, there was some funny days, a few weeks here and there. And then you add the complexity of 2 financial institutions trying to merge their data and their reporting and their compliance and all of that, which is a lovely experience.
And to this date, I think these are could be fresh challenges for some of our listeners, right? So working remotely, there are some talks of people coming back to the office, right? Some firms are asking them to go like certain amount of days, like, so you have a hybrid situation. So what are, like, you mentioned it very implicitly that you talk more amongst yourself and it helped. But what else did you do to help with that? It seems that it was a huge program too, right? 100 people, around 100.
Yeah, this was different from that first one, but this was a $60 million 1-year integration acquisition project. So pretty big. So you're right. What helped? So the first thing is, at the time, being a young person, not being tied down to, I wasn't married at the time, didn't have kids at the time. So I could easily move between the offices. And wherever possible, if people were comfortable doing that, we'd invite them to come and work for a couple of days or a few days here and there. Luckily, a good chunk of the folks were still in the GTA, Scarborough versus downtown versus Mississauga. So there was a way to bring people together. Folks in Ottawa, we couldn't do much about. But we made it a point to share travel plans. So if the folks in Ottawa were, for whatever reason, coming to Toronto, whether professional or personal, we made it a point to make sure we met, whether it's in a social context or work together for the day type thing. And if it was in an office that was more comfortable for those, we deferred to those things, and people generally would defer to making it easier for most people that were already traveling. So a little bit of a sense of support with each other helped. From my point of view, what I did was to make sure I continue to ask, continue to communicate, continue to keep track of these things, so that we had it at the forefront to make sure we spend time together. That was a key part of making this happen, and that applies today. And whether it's in a virtual context or hybrid context in our work environments, the point is that you have to pay attention to these things. And as a team facilitator or as a coach now, you have to pay attention. You have to bring these things to the forefront other than the work that is being done and the process
Right.
that may be being followed. Bring the people and the culture aspect forward, because we usually forget that. So that's what helped me do it. I was uncomfortable traveling TDC. Every day was a different route,
Right.
for a few days. But you have to do that for the benefit of the larger group. And some
Right.
people did it as well, not just me. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. A couple of things to add, if you don't mind. One,
Yeah.
it was in a Scrum guide, but they take it off. Being a servant leader, right? So, a servant leader, like no matter what type of leadership you would assume, sometimes as a Scrum masters, you need to serve the people there. So you might call it servant leader or whatever you want to call it, right? But sometimes you need to, if they are in their infancy, you need to prepare them, you need to even pamper them, you need to get them comfortable, like especially in your situation that there were two different cultures, this was an acquisition, people might feel threatened, right? So that was very kind and nice of you to travel to different locations, like they see you, right, like as a kind of as a glue, as a connector, like that's what we call them. um, One
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to add, like you mentioned Ottawa versus Toronto, I was working with one team that they find a very nice a solution, and anyone can do this. They had the same challenge. One team was in Toronto, one team was in Ottawa, and they wanted to have face-to-face conversation all the time. So they set up one TV and one webcam on top, and they specifically used a long room. So they put TV and camera on the one end of the room, and they
Right.
did the same thing in Ottawa. And this TV and camera was on 24 hours.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was like as you were working next to them,
Physical
like whenever
space.
they want to ask something, like from the end of the room, they come to the TV and camera and say, hey, John, can I talk to you? John was sitting on his desk. They could see that John is there. He's not gone to the washroom or go for
Right.
coffee. John comes to the TV and say, hey, I want to talk about you this. Can we share a screen? And they share the screen, they work on it. It was, so it's still
Yeah.
those small solutions you can.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And the funny thing is, what that made me think of is a war room, right?
Right,
And so when a lot of teams maybe go into production, they have multiple teams that to coordinate with, a whole implementation a plan has to be followed, et cetera, et cetera. You're essentially in a live call the whole time, whatever, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it takes. I
right,
hope it doesn't take that long, but for the 4 to 6 hours, I think on average, you're in that call together. And today that may be a Teams chat, but there used to be calls that were just open line. You come join in and out to give an update or to call out an issue or whatever it might be. You don't it doesn't have to feel as stressful as a war room, but that's the whole point of open communication. It's got to be easily accessible, and you need the visual cues to know whether someone's there or not.
right,
And then all these other things in the back of our head, oh, he didn't or she didn't respond to my message in time. Are they ignoring me?
right,
Well, yeah, they probably stepped away. So
right,
assuming positive intent keeps a healthy atmosphere in the team. So that is a great idea, and it's a good setup to
right,
even consider today with
right,
boardrooms or meeting rooms enabled with screens and cameras.
right. You mentioned something that it's really on top of my mind, and I want you to talk more about it if you don't mind. Have a
Mm-hmm.
positive intent. Um, Tell us more when you work with teams, and how would you use that? How would it shape you working with teams?
Yeah, this is one of those, and I think as a scrum master or as a team facilitator or even as a coach coming in more recently, last few years, I've started to just observe or even see what the behavior of a team is like around positive intent. So do we resort to, or does the team, or do people resort to, in a given team, a negative reaction immediately of something either missing or something going wrong, or do they ask questions purely based on curiosity and with the intent to help? And the basis of both are, something went wrong, it's not the person's fault, but we need to do something about it. And that's assuming positive intent, is that they didn't mean to sabotage it, they didn't mean to ignore it. It's purely something must have happened. Let's move on. Let's work
Right.
together on whatever it is. So whether it's a small thing or a big thing or a personal thing or a work related thing, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Positive intent is the basis of building good, strong relationships with your colleagues, with your family members, with your team, whoever it may be. It's a very important aspect of what I coach on as well with
Right.
team.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So, Fahad, let me ask you a little bit a different question. So,
Sure.
I ask this typically from my guest. I started a company called Elevate Change, and I typically ask the guests that coming to my podcast, what do you think about Elevate Change? What comes to your mind? Elevate Change.
Yeah, when I hear the terms elevate change, first I look, the visual in my mind is an elevator going upwards, not downwards. So that's a good thing. So, and what that means to me is, we look at root level changes all the time. Oh, adjust the way we our meeting frequency, or the way we run a specific meeting, or the way we write code, the way we test code, blah, blah. There's smaller things that we learn. Elevating change to me, when I saw that term, meant that bringing change to a bigger picture, and having the capacity and the vision to look at the forest instead of the trees. So to me, that's what it means. And it also means to elevate our minds in the leadership context, to bring it to higher levels of organization, where change is generally either assumed that is not needed, like we know what we're doing, just tell our teams to do well, or teach them how to do better agile, or do better development, or do better delivery, whatever it is. So to me, elevating change is to bring it to the level where you're looking at a larger context, and really improving that, and growing and making shifts in those larger contexts versus just the smaller ones. And sometimes, and there is a time and place for both, right? They can happen in congruence, they can happen in parallel, but we need to be mindful of the both levels, or not both, but the multiple levels of types of change we're looking for. So that's what it incited.
I love the description that you put. I'm going to use that describing what this is. Right? Thank you for putting
all
that.
yours.
But you mentioned something very important. I think you mentioned about leadership and how they are working or going through the change, right? And they look it at another level. Have you had any experiences that you can share with us that was successful, or it was failure working with leadership through a change that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'll start with I'll actually start with a note first, just tying back in positive intent. The first thing, and I started to see this over the last few years, it's gotten better now, but early on, when our, let's say, our Greater Toronto area community was a little more newer to agile, we used to say leaders are the problem, or leaders don't see this. But I would like to tie back positive intent here. I think leaders generally have good intentions, and the good intentions could be in a few contexts. They truly want to make a better organization. Of course, they're looking for self-growth, self improvement in their career, etc. Who doesn't? And the other piece is that we have to recognize that leaders are in a tough position in most cases. And having had some experience myself with leading multiple delivery teams at one of my previous employers, I was leading both what you would call the center of excellence, what I like to call the center of examples, or center of education for agile, and at the same time leading 4 or 5 delivery teams that were doing software development and maintenance, etc. You're in a tough position of having to balance people, their agendas, and your own interests and growth and what's important to you. And at the same time, you're balancing growing the people that are reporting to you and supporting the teams that need your help, direction, need you to play defense, sometimes need you to play offense. So the first recognition is that leaders are in a very important but a very tough position, and we should cut them some slack. I think that's an important call out I would like to make. In terms of an example, here's a good example. So one of the this is a president of a region of one of the companies I worked with in the last couple of years. And he reached out to us, the set of Agile coaches that were working in there, and said, I'm the president of blank operations, this region of Canada, and I need my executive team to be on the same page. And we don't know where to start. We're going through some changes, but we don't know where to start in terms of organizing our work. So of course they have the logical, the set of vision, like, okay, we have to increase market share by X. We have to make sure that we are attracting certain amount of sales staff and advisors in the company, independent advisors, etc. So we want to grow our business, which is totally fine. Those goals are clear. What we're having trouble with is twofold. The first one is that we have a set of new executive team members that are now going to have to work together. And the second thing is we are sort of more reliant on the rest of the Canada operations versus just, to say, the Quebec part of the country, like that kind of a situation. Where do we start? And so I remember his words, which were exactly, we've heard a little bit about Agile, but we would like to know the science is behind Agile, which is how do we operationalize this and make this work for us as an executive team? So keeping in mind, this is a team that's not building software, that is usually not building documentation even. They're probably more around thought leadership and communicating that through, say, PowerPoints or what have you, but also communicating downwards to the team on priorities and decisions, etc. So this is an operating committee level team. And first recognizing that leader was open enough to say, we've heard about Agile, we think it can help us. Can you help us make sense of this and to see what applies in our context? And so naturally we had a few discovery calls with them, and we just started with visualization. And that in itself was, visualization for those that are newer to what this means, it's purely putting up all the items for everybody to see on a simple board that says, here's what we need to do, here's what we're doing, and here's what we just finished, and perhaps what may be in our way that we need to address. And coming up with a set of decision-making criteria, or what most will call policies, that'll help us determine whether something is at a level of satisfaction that we are good with, or is it ready to move to the next stage, etc. So we helped them develop some of those policies as well, which were a set of questions they would ask and thresholds that they determine by themselves. So we just facilitated that set of, and this is, two of us coaches doing this for a couple of months just to get them going. And 6 months later, we got feedback. It's like, this is working great for us. We're able to constantly go back to our goals, constantly go back to our policies, and make decisions with so much more ease than we did before, because now a lot of our personal things are out of the way. We're all able to hold each other accountable and say, look, does this meet any one of the 1, 2, 3 objectives we've set out? No. If it doesn't serve any one of them at least, then we don't need to do this. We can deprioritize or ideate, or maybe find out if there's something in the idea there that allows us to get better value that'll get us to the objectives. So that was a big success story that we also use for our own marketing as an Agile coach, team of Agile coaches. That was a great positive experience. The one I would say, this is a little bit of a failure, if you will, was one of the larger programs at another company I worked that I consulted for. One of the larger programs, they were in a dire need of breaking down their teams into smaller teams. They had a large team of 35 to 40 people that was considered one team working on one application, and that's what they did. And so there we tried many things to try and get in and use data. So it's not like we didn't do the right things, it never turned.
Right.
Use data to show that they were overcommitting, use data to show that they were not delivering on time for the customer's point of view, right? They may be changing their own timelines to deliver, but when the customer expected something, they didn't have it at the time that the customer wanted it. And at the same time, they were making promises for delivery before they actually knew if this was a feasible promise to make, which are common problems we see, but they were doing them. And we tried many approaches through grassroots, through coaching, through facilitation, through some mentorship, so many different approaches that over the course of, let's say, 2 to 3 years, that they just didn't crack it. And when I say they, this was a set of, let's say, 2 to 3 people in the what you would call leadership, both in the business, technology, and delivery sides, that just wouldn't budge on that. And then I'm happy to see that in the last couple of months, I've been receiving information about, that group. I don't work there anymore, but, I still know people that they have actually started to break down into smaller teams, more feature focused, component focused teams, versus, working on one application and having like 20 backlog items that are big features all worked at the same time. So that was, I would say, a success that escaped us. But I'm happy to see that they came to a realization, but that's the life of coaches, right? Sometimes you have to let them fail a little bit and accept your own failure sometimes to just let things play out. Sorry, that was a long answer, but
No, that was a very good answer. And let me add to that we are not afraid of failure as coaches, right? So if we want it to happen faster, sooner, right?
Yeah.
So if we can make it happen faster, sooner, for us, for the client, both are better.
Sure.
But sometimes you work in this organization. I had a couple of experience myself that these are so behemoth, huge organizations that you don't even know the causations relationship there, right? What do I do to cause this thing to work better, right? Sometimes you just need to do something randomly, or something else happens that it yields results, and they think that you have done something, right? And then they come and ask you, hey, replicate this over there. I'm like, what shall I do then, right?
And then you start all over again to discover, and you find out what worked for another group doesn't work for this one. And it's a different set of problems. Why? Because it's a different set of people with different set of issues and intents, etc. Absolutely. I always say that coaches are not only welcoming to failure, but they also love pauses. We're completely comfortable with failure and pauses.
True.
I got to put that on a t-shirt.
2 points that I wanted to make from your previous example, that was a group of leaders that asked you to tell us the science behind Agile. So that was an amazing ask, but what it shows is that they are agreeing that the change is needed. Like, at least that's an agreement. Like, not only they agree that the change is needed, but we want to know how the Agile community does it, or how the Agile people does it, and understand the science, and you help us with that. And that was a very luxury opportunity to have. Typically, you go somewhere and as a consultant, as a coach, and they want some change, but not everyone is agreeing on the change, right? Or they are not agreeing on the nature of the change that needs to happen. Some people think that team needs to change. Some people think the leader needs to change. Some people think that someone all over the other place needs to change, right? So that was a very good ground for working. Amazing opportunity.
Not many, and this is kudos to that set of leaders, but specifically the requester to us, right? Who said, come and help me. So, this is president of a large region in Canada, and you would expect that comes with a set of pride. I could go even as far as saying ego in a lot of people, to say, I'm quite successful. I don't need the help. And so that, kudos to that leader that said, no, come and help me. I'm not the expert in everything. I know how to do sales. Don't teach me that. But how to operate better in a team. You guys are the experts of that. Come help us do that.
Right.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. So you have shared so many good experience from your professional life. If you look at your whole professional life, what is the what is the time, or what was the experience that you're most proud of?
There is one that is, close to my heart. There are two actually, but I will start with this one that first came to my mind. I had a person, another agile coach, report to me, and they sent me a note, or just on Teams to say, Fahd, and they'd been with that organization for over 2 to 3 decades. So they've been there for a long time. They'd seen a lot of changes, a lot of leaders that they had reported to over time, and people that had reported to them. And just to give you that context, and they said to me, Fahd, you leading this team has been a joy like no other. I'm not quoting, but this is paraphrasing the sense. I wish I had the quote in front of me. I would love to just read it to you, because it'd be the truest form. It has been a joy, and the way you, as a coach or as a leader or manager for us, have allowed us to kind of venture into what we want to do in the way we want to do it, and not be too prescriptive on the how, focused on the why, has been a joy to be a part of over the last 2 years that I was there at the time, so far. That was a matter of personal pride to me, and I'm usually very uncomfortable with talking about myself in that kind of boasting way, but this was a thing of personal joy, and I did store the paragraph somewhere. I just couldn't find it, damn it, right this moment. But that was one personal, and in my professional role, and it was I didn't have a lot of experience at the time with leading and managing reports, like people reporting to me. Leading and managing people, but not people reporting to me, is all the experience I had, and so this was a truly meaningful, not only feedback, but just an appreciation from someone on the team. That was one. And that was, that person is still great friends with me and close to my heart, and I'm working on something with them as well. The other one was more of a delivery focused thing that, I worked with one of the largest banks in Canada to launch this product of a self-serve business account to open. And that was probably the best team and the closest team I've come to what we know as productivity or hyper performance that I've worked with. And to this date, we are all good friends, great, close friends. We know each other's medical history in a sense, like, when a surgery is happening, when our birthday's happening of our kids, like that kind of a close relationship. And this was a team of people that worked together for a year and a half to launch this product, and then to make other improvements and for further features in it. And this was a huge venture for the bank at the time, that they had a very manual, multi-step, category review process for opening a business account with them. And so I worked with these set of people to change that to self-serve. You get an account number right in the moment within the next 8 minutes of filling out this application, and even a credit check, like all of those integrations that you need that are requirements. We used things that had not been used in the market before to actually do registry checks, to do background checks and profile, credit history checks, etc. Credit history is quite a common one, but some of the other checks that we had in place just hadn't been used before. So that was a great example of, a bank or a client saying, we're going to be bold in this space. We're going to take risks. We're going to try out new technology where it'll help our clients and help build our market share and reduce, turnaround time. It used to take a month for an account to open on average. Can you believe that? Just a simple checking account. Now you can have an account open within minutes, and your client card can come to you within a week. 7 to 10 business days. That's regular. but you can have an operational account 8 to 10 minutes. That's a huge leap for any provider to say we're onboarding a new client in the next 8 minutes, and then they can start using it in the next 5-10 minutes or whatever. So, yeah, those are two matters of professional pride for me.
I remember the first time that I went to a Canadian bank and tried to open my account. It might show my age, but it was a huge pile of document that you had to sign, and every time, what is this about? Like she was trying to help me understand. Like after a while, like, I'm just going to sign all of these things. Like probably I shouldn't have. I don't recommend anyone. Please read what you sign. But it was, and then she gave me still I have that. I still have that. And I remember after a while they introduced online banking. I was like, oh my God, online banking, that's amazing. And then,
I mean, just to close that off, so imagine all that paperwork had just turned into an online portal with exactly the same fields without thought to streamline. And so even if it was an online application, the process was exactly the same, which was painful. Awesome.
What would you have done differently if you had a chance?
I actually thought about this. I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of years, just as my own personal coaching growth. And one of those things is, as I shared earlier, I got introduced to the world of Scrum specifically, and that was my intro to Agile. And a lot of people even today believe Scrum is Agile, Agile is Scrum only. Like there's a one-to-one relationship there, and that's it. What I'd wished I would have done earlier is open myself up to more practices earlier on than I did. So for example, Kanban is one of those, and the thinking around Kanban. Lean is quite baked into a lot of Agile things in general, but the concepts of Lean, like the 7 wastes and things like that, I wish I'd seek more of that earlier on and start to bring a lot more of that into the work I was doing, both as a Scrum Master and then even as a coach at some point. And so that is not a regret, because you can always get more information. Your mind is always working, so you can always learn at any given age or point in your career. And we're learning even just talking to each other right now. But I wish I'd done it a little earlier and started to apply and test those concepts for me to understand and master them earlier than I did. So it's a thing that I'm catching up, but aren't we all? But I wish I'd done it earlier so that I can apply a bunch of these concepts.
The moment that you assume you're agile, that's the moment that you're not. There's always more to learn. And so on that note, what would you recommend people? Is there a resource that you would recommend people if they are starting with their agility journey, or something that drastically change your thought process that you want everyone to know about? Like it could be a course, could be a person, could be a book, anything that you want to recommend.
Yeah, I actually already do give these recommendations, and this is a great opportunity to share these. Of course, you're not limited to only using these, but I have different aspects of it. The first is being around other Agilists, more experienced Agilists physically. I volunteer with Agile TO. I know you have Lean and Agile meetup. So being part of these meetup groups is actually a huge benefit that I received as a growing Scrum Master that just came out of a 2-day course and said, great, let me just do this. But then you need guidance, and sometimes you don't have guidance at work. So at the time, at least, and the community was fairly small. Today, there are more and more trained Scrum Masters, those trained Kanban leads, but they're not experienced yet. And so leaning on, see how I work that in, leaning on other experienced Agilists and being around them and listening to them and understanding what they're trying to say, and finding these areas of growth to say, okay, I think I want to learn more about this, is a key thing. So look for meetups, and these are free, right? So you don't have to pay memberships for these. These are free in the community organized by these wonderful people like yourself and others to grow and mature our community the way in a healthy and a true way versus letting it continue with misconceptions in the wrong direction. So that's number one, being physically around. And when I say physically, it also means through Zoom. There are other folks that are hosting meetups and fireside chats and things like that. So definitely avail yourselves to those. Of course, books are a great source. One that I'm reading right now is The Joy of Agility by Joshua Karyevsky, who, the guy who's founded Industrial Logic, and if some folks may know Modern Agile, the wheel. No, he was these are all his brainchild. So what he's done with this book is just a short collection of stories about the joy of agility, and he's applied both personal and professional stories to. So reading books is a great one. You can start, as a new Scrum Master coming in, if that's what you decide to go, or a new Kanban trained professional, just going back to the basics of the Blue Book, or even reading the Agile Project Management. So these are very old books in the Agile space. Can just introduce you to examples and to ideas that'll help you at least find areas of curiosity. I'm a coach now, and a book that really, really I still go back to every once in a while to work on different aspects of my coaching skill and mentoring skill is Agile Coaching by Lisa Atkins. And even to this day, I'll be like, oh, I need a tidbit on how to approach this, or let me revisit this concept so I can apply it here better. Those are a couple of books that really helped me. Folks in the Agile community internationally that I revere and learn a lot from. Mike Cohen is one, I call him the godfather of user stories, but he's really great with just overall Scrum and user stories and planning, poker, like some of these concepts, and just how to deal with team dynamics and product backlog. So everything. Lisa Atkins is another one as a very senior, experienced Agile coach. There are a couple others in the local community that I love. I only know his nickname. I forget his real name, but Cheesy. So what's his name? It'll come to me.
Jeff Morgan.
Jeff Morgan. Thank you. I always know his. These are folks that I just sat and listened to at meetups, and they have this wisdom and this knowledge that they bring, both technical or people focused or otherwise, that you can say, okay, I understand this, or no, I don't understand it, but I know what it's called. Let me go and learn. So yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. Fahd, is there anything that we should have talked about but we didn't? Is there anything that is you want to share?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of great things. Just one of the things people ask me, and this is me just thinking right off the cuff now, Shaheen. One of the things people ask me is, Fahd, what prompted you to go into Agile coaching, or how did you go into Agile coaching, say from Scrum Master or from some other role, right? And my answer usually to that is, I'd come to a point as a Scrum Master where, especially when you've been with some clients for a little longer, that you get your team to a good place of self-organization, and that frees up some of your time. And I use that time personally to then help other Scrum Masters do things a little differently, or even learn from them on things I can tweak and apply. So, and eventually, as I started to do that more and more, I found more and more joy in that. And I said, I guess that's what a coach does. They help other practitioners get better using their own experience, but also they learn from other practitioners to see if there's something they can improve on to apply and help other practitioners, right? So that's part of what, I said, okay, I've learned a few things. I can start helping others, and there's a lot more to learn for me. And by helping others, I'll solidify what I already know as concepts and better myself there, but also be introduced to new issues, new problems. And the one thing we find it difficult to we really can't do is to live someone else's life, but we can try to get the wisdom from it. And so that's what prompted my journey as a coach, is to start to help others like the community had helped me. And that's maybe one area I would love to, like, I wanted to address that or to share that with some of your listeners. What may prompt a change, or some people think this is a level change, like, oh, I get promoted from a scrum master to a coach. No, I think it's more of a calling or a realization of what you want to do. Some folks are very happy being scrum masters, and they should be, because they're so good at what they do, and they're so committed to that they don't want to do anything else, and that's totally fine. So this is not an upgrade or a level up in a career. It's a different path that became available to me and gave me more satisfaction in my career. So I just wanted to address that one.
I remember in early days when I was a developer, I started working in a company, and there was this gentleman that was developer there for 30 years, and he was still a developer, and he was asking the colleagues there, why hasn't he been promoted to a team lead, or hasn't he promoted to a management? Because I assumed that's a natural progression of if you're good at what you do. But then after I matured in my professional career, I figured out, no, that's not always the natural path. Sometimes you decide that this is where I want to be, and I'm really good at this, and I'm there. Like, I remember at that time he had books from assembly language to Delphi to C++, any kind of language that you could think about. It was on his desk. He had a huge, so he was very good developer. So why would he change that, right? So even if you go up the ranks, right, now everyone respected him very, very, very deeply. So Fahd, on that note, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciated your presence, and I valued our conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too. And is there any way, do you want to share how people can get in touch with you, if that's something that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Shane. This was a pleasure, and I know we'll talk a lot more, but this was awesome to be here. You can reach me through LinkedIn. Just search my name, FAHDKHAN, Fahd Khan. And I have a website. It needs work, but it's milesprint.com. I will be revamping it a little bit as well. And I'm working on something, in the near future, later in the year 2023, for folks to come in and learn a few things that I've come to learn, and I'd like to share and build a community. So more on that later, and that'll be up on the website. But those are two places to reach out to me, and my email's there as well. So thank you for your time, Shane, and this was fun.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.